We're joined now by Herman Torres, president of the public advocacy group Speak, and Spencer Blackhart, White House political consultant. Now, Mr. Blackhart, you were involved in the president's Senate outreach during this confirmation process.
That's right, David.
Now, the big story here isn't just the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch, but the altering of Senate rules to abolish the judicial filibuster in what is known as the nuclear option. Now, Mr. Blackhart, was there any fear on your part that this could come back to bite the Republicans in the future?
Absolutely not. The changes that were made last week are for the good of the country. The fact that there is no turning back should actually be seen as a positive.
Herman, it looks like you want to jump in here, so I'm going to toss this over to you. Now, you've been very critical of this move, and you're not alone. But was all of this really inevitable after the Democrats used the nuclear option in 2013 to remove the filibuster for lower appointments?
No, it wasn't. It's only inevitable if you're willing to put party above country. I think damage was done to the Senate in 2013, but significantly more damage was done this last week. And saying that it's inevitable just shows how little Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, and truthfully, anyone who voted for this nuclear option cares about the principles of America. This is an extremely dark day, David. Not only because of what it means for women's rights and voting rights and campaign finance, but even more so because of what it means for democracy. Our country was founded and entirely based on the concept of cross-party cooperation. By removing the filibuster, which, by the way, removing it the very first time the Democrats used it, this permanently ensures that there will be no reason for cross-party cooperation. The real tragedy just isn't what's being done with majority rule power. It's that it's now abundantly clear that majority rule is the name of the game going forward. And when you consider that the gerrymandering of congressional districts has ensured that the majority of Congress doesn't even represent the majority of voters, that should be a truly terrifying prospect. It needs to be important to us that minority voters are heard and considered. It needs to be important to us that minority opinions are respected. We are now an objectively worse country now than we were before last week.
Well, of course, the House has always operated in a more majority rule sort of way, but the Senate was designed to be the more deliberative body, both in the ways the terms of office are structured and in the ways the rules are set out for the chamber, which always gave the minority party a certain level of power. Now, Mr. Blackhart, are you worried that this rule change permanently damages the Senate and changes it from being the more deliberative body?
Oh yeah, David, we're really concerned. Because if there's one thing that really turns the president on, it's deliberation. Look, hippies like Torres might get all nice and hot at the idea of talking for hours and getting nowhere, but that's not how we're going to make America great again. We won't stand for it. The fact is, this country has run off the rails. We've been deliberating for 230 years, and I think I can speak for all of us when I say we're done with it. If something isn't working, you get rid of it.
Just to clarify, you're speaking of the filibuster.
No, democracy.
What? You cannot possibly...
May I finish? Look, democracy had its chance, but if there's one thing the last year taught us, it's that Americans want bold, decisive action. They want excitement. And if there's one thing the past 230 years have shown us, it's that democracy is boring. Look, when you have protest attendance at record highs and voter turnout scraping record lows, the priorities of the American people are clear, and it's not to have a say in the matter. It's to be able to just complain once it's done. Everybody wins.
This is ridiculous.
Please, may I finish? May I finish? Thank you. Look, Mr. Torres may love to complain about all the terrible things that are going on, and women's rights and deportations and yada, yada, yada. But the fact is, if liberals actually wanted their say in the matter, they wouldn't have stayed home last November.
Mr. Blackhart, are you saying that low voter turnout justifies the dismantling of democratic institutions?
I'm saying that 150 years ago, our forefathers set forth this great Constitution. And last week we fixed it.
This is outrageous. Spencer...
Are we on a first-name basis, Herm? Are we casual? Are we bros, Hermano? If we are, let me just casually say, fuck you! I didn't interrupt when you were talking and I'm not finished. During the last election, the American people made it very clear that they wanted change. They made it equally clear they did not care particularly about what kind of change it was. This is a mandate if ever there was one. If the left wanted power, they would unite and act in that interest. But instead, they eat each other alive because, frankly, it's much more satisfying. All we're doing is ensuring they get to do so for decades to come.
Now, aren't you concerned about the political retribution that abolishing the filibuster might cause?
What are they going to do, filibuster us?
Well, the legislative filibuster is still in effect.
You are adorable. We're not exactly out of nukes, David. We can literally abolish the legislative filibuster whenever we want to. The problem with hippies like Torres is they think the country was based on cooperation. But America is based on competition. When your neighbor's house is on fire, the American way is not to help him put it out. It's to charge him through the roof for fire insurance and then take his house as your own. What we've done, David, is we have finally brought America to Congress. Also some of Russia.
Mr. Blackhart, many of your critics, both on the right and left, have said that this tactic is short-sighted and that when the Democrats regain power, the Republicans will live to regret it.
Oh, please, David. Gerrymandered districts can give us a permanent majority, and by eliminating the minority voice, majority becomes unanimity. Plato wrote in The Republic that the best form of government is the benevolent dictator. Well, we're accomplishing the second half of that.
Mr. Blackhart...
May I finish? May I finish?
Are you finished?
I'm never finished.